Continue, sir. You're doing a marvelous job. I should write you my check tonight for this class.
The categorical imperative. Immanuel Kant was born in 1724 and died in 1804. He was one of the most revolutionary philosophers in all of history, with a plethora of treatises which are too numerous to list. But the one which we discuss is the categorical imperative. Now, Kant's concept of freedom is that in a resting state, say an animal, isn't free because it is only governed by the laws of nature and by natural inclinations. Why isn't this considered freedom? It's because we did not choose, the animal did not choose to have those inclinations. It does not choose what it desires. We are also subject to these, and we can also choose to live by them. But if we choose to live that way, we will not be free because we will not be acting out of freedom and therefore cannot be morally accountable. And also, if one were to base morality off of the material world, it would only be based on your individual perception of the world, not on the world objectively. So it's frankly impossible to build it on the grounds that Bentham and Mill tried to. The categorical imperative. I ought never to act except in such a way that I can also will that my maxim should become a universal law. Now, the categorical imperative isn't morality in itself. It's only a way of making individuals become moral. And through the use of reason, we can arrive at the universal law. This capacity for reason is uniform throughout all of humanity, and thus can be used to arrive at the same conclusions as everybody around us. The categorical imperative says that we must follow them unwaveringly, because that is the only way to become a moral person, free yourself of all the natural inclinations, and therefore become free. The purpose of imperatives, it is to make you become a better person. Now, where Bentham said didn't really care about whether you were a good person, he only cared about whether your action was good, Kant says the opposite, that the action is irrelevant so long as you have that respect for human dignity. That law, the universal law, only exists to protect other human beings and to protect their dignity. So if you align your will with reason, then you will naturally respect human dignity. The kinds of wills. Now, the natural will is one which is governed by natural laws and natural inclinations, and therefore cannot be considered free because it doesn't have any choice in the matter. But Kant also talks of a divine will, whose will is by its very nature aligned with reason. Now, this kind of being, God, doesn't need a categorical imperative because God's will is already aligned with reason. It's only necessary for us because we are imperfect and have natural tendencies. Kinds of imperatives. Now, a hypothetical imperative is an imperative which uses means, whatever they may be, to serve a later end which will conclude the imperative altogether. There's nothing moral or immoral about hypothetical imperatives. We use them every day. To come here, you either walked here or used a car in order to get here. That's a hypothetical imperative. But morality can only work in terms of categorical imperatives, which is an imperative which holds that certain ends are categorically right or wrong, leaving no gray area, and that can never be violated morally. The problem with a hypothetical imperative is that if you place a human being as a means instead of an end, you can violate that person's human dignity in order to achieve a certain end. And this is practically the entire utilitarian moral system. It's only looking towards the end, and whatever may be in between doesn't really matter. Well, where Kant saw human beings as ends in themselves, and that they should be treated like that all the time. Here's an example. A person walks into a store and buys an item. The owner of the store knows that he can shortchange the customer and get away with it. The question is not if he should do it, but why should he not do it? Now, a utilitarian might say that the person may realize that he was shortchanged, or it might get out that the owner of the store was dishonest and nobody would shop there. But let's change it for a second to annul that. Let's say that the customer was still stupid, but he didn't speak English. The utilitarian still might say that he may need all the money that he can get, he may be very poor, but let's make it a very wealthy, non-English speaker. Therefore, you can shortchange that, or the owner can shortchange that customer, and it would be only beneficial to him and not be detrimental to anybody else. But Kant says that you still should not shortchange the customer because it is the customer's right to have their dignity respected, and that it is an inviolable right that they should not be shortchanged.
So let's take, hi Mr. Kelly, how are you?
Sorry, I'm late.
Let's take that equal pay for equal work, Michael. Walk me through this based on what you just told us about utilitarianism and Kant. Let's take equal pay for equal work. How does it play out right there?
Well, with equal pay, it would be considered morally wrong in either moral system, because in utilitarianism, the women are not being paid equally, and that creates, although it may create pleasure within the businessman, the workers rather, they need it more than the businessman. And with Kant's categorical imperative, every female worker has a right not to be shortchanged for their work. They have the right to have their rights respected.
So Kant would say to us, let's say the law doesn't exist. Charlie Baker didn't sign it until on Monday. If he was sitting in this room and I said, look, I'm a business person. I can do anything I want when it comes to paying my people because they're the ones that take what I offer them, what would Kant say to me, Michael?
He would say that it would still be immoral, regardless of whatever law was in place. The law in terms of legislation is only an interpretation of morality made by a government, while what's moral or immoral is always moral or immoral regardless of any circumstances put in place.
So you see that whole difference? Nice point, nice follow-up. I've been trying to confuse Michael by butting in, but you know he's holding his ground.
All right, objections to Kant's moral theory. Utilitarianism. Now, John Stuart Mill retorted by saying that the respect for human rights would create a prosperous society, which would create a greater pleasure for everybody. So Kant's moral system is really still just a desire for pleasure, because that respect for human rights is something which we all desire, and thus it nulls all of Kant's writings, saying that it's all just one utilitarian end. Impracticality. Arthur Schopenhauer disagreed with Immanuel Kant on the grounds that his system was simply impractical. It was impossible to practice, especially in a sensible way, because the system itself is full of contradictions, especially when it enters the real world. One common example, though not one of Schopenhauer's, is, let's say you're hiding Jews in your attic in Nazi Berlin, and two Nazi officers come to your door and ask if you're hiding any Jews. Any sane person would say, no, I'm not hiding anybody, but Kant reasons that you still cannot violate the dignity of those two Nazi officers, regardless of what they've done, regardless of what they will do, because it is their right to receive the honest truth.
Michael, hold on, I just got a big oh no from Jennifer in front of me. My desk shook because she shook her head. So what happened there, Jennifer? You went, oh no, what happened?
No, Kant is, I mean,
It's okay, tell us.
you know, the Nazis are violating rights, you know, on their own, so it should be.
But is it possible to violate so many other people's rights to the point where they are not even human anymore? The simple fact of the matter is that they are human, which is something that's very difficult to admit. But so long as they are human, they do have that human dignity in Kant's moral system to receive all the rights that his moral system demands of people. And it is a very difficult moral system because of those practical implications.
He's not defending Kant, he's just telling,
Oh,
that's not how Michael feels. No, he's just
You're
laying it on.
unbiased, you're unbiased. Right?
Yeah,
Yeah, he's unbiased. This guy Kant, you know, we wouldn't want him in class every night, but no, he's just bringing us this guy. Oh, this one here too. So thank you, Michael.
All right, the unreliable mind. Now, Sigmund Freud, the founder of the psychoanalytic theory, said that every human being has a different capacity for reason. And if every person has a different capacity for reason, how can we all arrive at the same universal laws? And if we cannot arrive at those same universal laws, then there can't be any universal law whatsoever, because it is all subjective. So just as pain and pleasure are subjective in the utilitarian system, all the ideas of reason and the ideas of right and wrong are still subjective within Kant's moral system. Now, Kant's moral theory is the most difficult, possibly, of all philosophy, not because of exactly what it asks us to do, but because of what it asks us to become. Kant wants us to become moral people, and when we become moral people, only that will lead to virtuous actions. But this can be incredibly difficult, because we have to set aside any emotion we have towards anybody who may be around us, any sentiment that we have in our souls, abandon all of that for pure reason. But the one saving grace of Kant's moral theory is that it's only through that endless pursuit of reason, that endless pursuit of morality and the universal law, that we can free ourselves of our natural bonds and become absolutely free individuals. That's it.
Nice job. Oh, wow. Nice job. well done. I love your PowerPoint slides. I love the fact that you took the time to find photos, and by the way, your real-world examples were fascinating. Just to follow up on Michael's point about Nazis and hiding Jews in attics, the woman who protected Anne Frank and her family, her first name was Meek. I don't know her last name. She lived to be 100 years old, and she just passed away about a week ago, I believe. And when she was asked probably 3 months ago, Jennifer, as a follow-up, why did you do it? You could have been killed, could have been thrown in a concentration camp. She said, what else would another human being do for another human being, right? You follow? Because that's why you got so upset. Well, by the way, Michael was just presenting Kant. He wasn't telling us he truly believed in him, and I saw the pain. But can you imagine, me and her friends who protected Anne Frank and her family faced everyday death in a Nazi concentration camp, but did it because it was the right thing, because what else would another human being do for another human being? So Michael, I have it for you because we've been struggling with economics and capitalism and all that. I'd like to believe that reasonable men and women, when left up to their own devices, will do the right thing. So am I don't know, am I a guy who believes in fairy tales and the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus when I say that reasonable men and women, when left up to their own devices, will do the right thing?
I think you might be.
You think I might believe in Santa Claus?
Well, if you look at individual people on their own accounts, let's discard of any customs, traditions, or laws.
Right.
The state of nature is undoubtedly chaotic. This goes back to Thomas Hobbes, who said that people must pledge themselves to an all-powerful ruler in order to rid themselves of the state of nature. But in today's climate, there's a fascinating philosopher named Michel Foucault who said that any moral system is completely fraudulent and that it's only a way of accruing power of one group over another, moral relativism. And in the case of business, in the cases of, say, equal pay for equal work, when the employers don't want the employees to discuss their wages, it's not for some moral reason. It's just to reinforce their power over the employees so that they can protect their own interest. And Michel Foucault states that this goes back through all of history. In any moral system that has ever been developed, it has only been done in order to maintain power over other groups. An example of this is with colonialism. All the European powers thought that they were bringing civilization to Africa, when indeed all they wanted was whatever resources they could find.
Okay. Any questions or comments for this fine gentleman? Questions or comments? Oh, Gita, you always have something to offer. What do you think?
That's good.
Huh?
That's good.
What is your major going to be in college?
Well, I want to be a writer, so probably creative writing.
What else? Anyone else? Oh, Gita, you're laying low in this? You don't have any questions or thoughts?
Yeah, I'm learning a little low on this.
Okay. Lee, how about you? Give us the 17-year-old perspective. Lee, give me a 17-year-old perspective.
Very interesting.
So Lee, here we go. And during the Vietnam War, I want to give you this quote, because this is how crazy things got. In the Vietnam War, the North Vietnamese would take control of the village. And then we go in and drive them out, we take control of the village. And when we left, they'd come back, and so we were going after this village for about a year, just over and over again. People getting killed to make sure nobody controlled this village. So one day they flew B-52 bombers over the village and blew it off the face of the map. Gone. Everybody in it, every hut, gone. And when someone asked the general, watch this, why did you destroy the village and kill everybody in it? In order to save it, we had to destroy it. See the craziness of that? In order to save it, in our mind, save it from whatever we thought it needed to be saved, if we couldn't do it one way, we were going to do it another. So we bombed it, killed everybody, wiped it off the face of the earth. It's not there anymore. Nobody's going to rebuild there. Guess what? We're not going to be fighting over this village. You see how crazy things got? So Michael gives us this little walkthrough, but Michael, I got to challenge you here with a couple things. Up until the 1860s, and by